So when it comes to the project, let me give you a little bit of background about our funder. So this project, this work has been generously funded by Interact. Interact is a 4.4 million Made Smarter Innovation funded economic and social research council-led network that has a fundamental aim to bring together economic and social scientists, UK manufacturers, and digital technology providers to address the human issues resulting from the diffusion of novel and innovative technologies in industry. As part of this, we have been awarded with a research grant, and we've worked in order to develop what forms the foundation and the basis of the project that we are going to present to you today. So in addition to that, it would be useful to share the names of our academic collaborators and frankly the people that form the foundation of the team behind this particular project. So in addition to myself and Tony, we had the pleasure to work with a number of scholars, and we have to start with Nancy Young, our PhD student at the University of East Anglia, that enormously helped with data collection, data analysis, cleaning, and visualization, some of the visualizations. In addition to that, we had the pleasure to work with Dr. Javad Raja from Copenhagen Business School, George Papadopoulos from School of Economics at the UEA, our colleague Thomas Harrington at Norwich Business School at the University of East Anglia, and Marco Basel at Marquette University as well. So in addition to that, I wanted to share some information about the intended audience for that particular webinar in terms of the manufacturing small to medium-sized enterprise owners, managers, or in broader terms, the principal decision makers that are keen and interested to better understand on the concept of digital servitization and its implications for business models in the realm of their firms. We do understand that there is a genuine interest, academic interest from colleagues and scholars actually with a genuine interest in servitization and to a broader extent digital servitization. And we expect that this is profoundly relevant to policymakers in the areas of industrial strategy. And last but not least, people that are working as digitization consultants. So without further ado, we are ready to kick off, and Tony, feel free actually to start telling us a few more details.
Sure. Just to confirm, Dimitri, that you can see the aims of the webinar slide, right?
Yep, certainly.
Okay, very good. So hello from me as well. The aims of this webinar is primarily, firstly, to share key findings of our project. Then we will also share with you the website, which we are kind of pretty proud of. We have tried to repackage our findings into something that could be useful for SMEs or consultants or even academics. Okay, the website has a practical toolkit. We call it SME Toolkit. It is basically a tool, is an application on the website that anybody can use. And finally, the final aim is to invite feedback from you and post-webinar engagement. If you are interested in any aspect of the project, you can reach back to us. Right, so there are two important concepts, okay, that underpin our project. Okay, these two important concepts are digitalization and servitization, which merged together form the concept of digital servitization. All right, so we conceive digitalization and servitization as two business model innovations that are relevant to manufacturers, which can be implemented separately or together. Implemented together, simply speaking, it leads to what is called in the literature digital servitization. So digitalization is the use of digital technologies to change a business model. Okay, broadly speaking, it is the process of moving to a digital business. Okay, any business can do that. Servitization is more specific to manufacturers and is synonymous with companies moving from selling products and basic services such as repair and maintenance to selling advanced offerings such as advanced services, customer solutions, and product service systems. Because this seminar is intended primarily to practitioners, I'm not getting into the details of the concepts, the academic debates about the concept, what is servitization and what is not. I'm just introducing the definitions that led to this work. And I would like to mention a couple of examples for those of you who might not be familiar with servitization, examples that we use in our teaching, and they are commonly seen in the business press and so on. So one example that you might have come across it is Rolls-Royce Power by the Hour. Okay, so what does this servitized business model do? Rolls-Royce, instead of selling the engine, they in effect sell miles, fly miles. Okay, so they basically the airline leases under a contract the engine, and Rolls-Royce promises like 10 years promises an X amount of miles, whereby under a 10-year contract, let's say, they will maintain, they will monitor, they will diagnose the engine, and they will intervene whenever it is necessary. Other examples that we are closer to us, printing. Okay, so in our universities, we and you in your universities, if you are academics, you might have a contract with Xerox or Canon, whereby we have not bought the actual printer. We have, in a way, leased the printer, and we are paying for photocopies. We are paying for the use of the printer. Okay, and Xerox or Canon are responsible for maintaining the printer, upgrading it if they deem to, or even repair it if it breaks down. Okay, so these are standard examples. But what happens in the literature is that you can put a name behind the examples for large firms. There are not many examples in the academic literature or the business literature of small to medium-sized enterprises which have proceeded to such servitized business models. It is hard to find. And I'm mentioning, just because this work is centered around SMEs, I'm mentioning two examples that come from academic literature, but as you might see, you can see already, these are not, there's not name, these SMEs are not named, okay? What I'm trying to say is that basically, there are many examples of larger businesses moving into servitization, fewer examples of SMEs moving to servitization. Consequently, and interrelated, is the fact that the literature, the academic literature in the subject, has primarily focused on larger businesses, okay? How larger businesses consider servitization, how larger businesses, large firms move into servitizations, what barriers they face, what challenges they face, what enablers they might use to successfully transition to servitization, to a servitized business model. The consequence of that is that there is little that SMEs can take as insight from the academic literature and apply to their business if they're interested in progressing in a servitized business model. And this is the rationale of this work. The two examples, just quickly go through this. An SME, they come from a published paper, Koreinen et al. Okay, a metalwork supplier adopted digital technologies, which we don't need to go into the detail of what they are. Basically, these technologies enable the design of new services to customers. Okay, they use their expertise to provide training and consulting on the use of these technologies to customers. And secondly, instead from a position where they were supplying metal component A and metal component B to the same customer, they moved to a position where they could provide an assembled system, okay? Component A, component B, and various other components supplied as a system, okay, to the customer. So that's an example of servitization. Second example, similar, okay, an SME, a manufacturer of precision engineered components, introduced 3D printing that comes from Belgium. Okay, they were pioneers, according to the paper, on this, and they started designing components using data, dental prosthetics, digital data from the customer. They also implemented an online marketplace. Okay, that's an additional feature that transformed their business model. And thirdly, they even established 3D printing machines at selected customer locations, for which they offered remote monitoring and materials. Okay, effectively, they became a consultant of their customers. They helped them transform digitally. Okay, so these are just two examples. There are many other examples, but if you have actually names of SMEs that from the business press that have evidently moved to digital servitization, we'd be very happy to hear from you about this. Right, so digital servitization. Digital servitization, as I said, is the convergence of the two concepts, the two trends, the two innovations of digitalization and servitization. Okay, a definition that is commonly used, there are many, by the way, is a transition towards smart product service software systems that enable value creation and capture through monitoring, control, optimization, and autonomous function. In simpler words, digital servitization is the utilization of digital technologies to enable transformation of a business model from a pure product provider to a servitized firm. There are some shortcomings that motivated this project. Okay, these were, of course, these were the shortcomings that motivated the project 1 year ago. Okay, there is a lot of work that is happening in digital servitization literature that tries to address these shortcomings. But what is the main rationale? The main rationale, as I mentioned, as I alluded to earlier, is the lack of applicability or unclear applicability of insights to manufacturing small and medium-sized enterprises. Why? Because most of the research has focused on larger firms. SMEs represent obviously 99% of the firms in the UK at least, and a large fraction of the output, and of course a large fraction of employees are employed by SMEs. Okay, so they are asymmetrically neglected by the literature. There are few papers, some good, some worse, that look at SMEs, but it is unclear whether SME owners, high-level managers, can adopt and apply the insights that emerge from the servitization and digital servitization literature domains. SMEs face resource constraints. If any of you come from SME in this webinar, you might relate to this. Okay, there are resource constraints, scale, bandwidth, time. Okay, you are limited in terms of how many people you can employ. You are limited as to how much time and money you can invest in developing a capability. Okay, so there are different animals to large firms. Okay, we claim. Also, tangentially and relatedly, there is in the literature, in the recent editorials and reviews of the field of digital servitization and servitization, there is a lack of quantitative measures of digital servitization. Okay, there is no clear way how to measure quantitatively the extent of digital servitization. Another shortcoming was the overrepresentation of qualitative studies. Many very good studies, fewer quantitative studies. Okay, so again, there is an asymmetry that is mentioned in many of those reviews of systematic literature reviews of the field of servitization. Okay, this is not our just claim; it's the claim a consensus claim of academics working in the area. Now, specifically for our project, one problem that we see is the limited understanding of the factors that lead firms to choose one servitization business model over another. Okay, so which business model does a firm go? It's unclear what factors lead the choice, differentiate between one business model over another. And finally, there is limited understanding of what digitally enabled service-based business models are most suitable under different conditions. So the question as to which model is more likely to lead to success, to improve performance, under what conditions, is also a question that does not have an answer, a clear answer in the digital servitization literature. So these are, in a nutshell, and very briefly, the motivations of our work. So the aims of this project was firstly to identify environmental and organizational factors that differentiate between business models, okay, to answer the question of the choice, okay, how do firms choose which business model, which digital servitization of business model to go for. And secondly, to identify the configurations of factors that are conducive to higher performance of digital servitization of business models. Okay, so the study one was basically to explain the choice. Study two is to explain the differential performance of SMEs given the choice of a business model. And the report and this webinar are focused on the second question. Okay, we will talk about the configurations of factors that lead to higher performance of SMEs that have chosen a particular business model. So I've been talking about business models. Okay, which are those? What are those business models? What are those types? Scanning the literature, we came to realize that there is no typology which is widely accepted, and there is no typology of business models, of digital servitization business models, that can be operationalized, okay, in a way that could enable a large-scale quantitative study. So we kind of adapted existing typologies and came up with a new one. Okay, we acknowledge, of course, that we drew from typologies already developed and came up with basically 4 different types of digital servitization of business models, which you can see here is 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's add-on, usage-based, solution-oriented, and platform. And of course, we wanted to give the option to the respondents, I'm going to get into it in a minute, of being of their firm not having proceeded to a digital servitization business model. So an exhaustive classification would include a just servitized business model, which is number 1 here, product and services, okay, where digital technologies do not play a role in providing the product or play a very minimal role. That was the phrasing. And a pure product, okay, an SME that does not provide any service, not a problem at all. Many SMEs do that, okay? So we have basically 6 options. And the key thing here, in order to study at a large scale, okay, the servitization of business models, the choice, and explain the performance, we wanted clear and coherent business model descriptions, textual descriptions that a respondent, an SME owner, or a high-level manager could relate to, and they could choose and say, okay, this is our business model that we use in our primary line of business. And the textual descriptors, I'm not expecting you to read them, of course, they look something like this. Okay, they look actually exactly like this. This is a screenshot from the survey instrument. Okay, so we consulted both academics and practitioners to develop these textual descriptors. We had to refine them many times in order to make them clearly distinct. Okay, and we believe that we have achieved that. And I'm not going to go through this, but for example, the add-on here, the add-on business model is basically the use of digital technologies in order to enable an additional function or add a customized service to an existing physical product. Okay, so it could include things such as the provision of digital features, such as software applications or services. And I have some examples here. Okay, an add-on, basically, an add-on business model would be something like a wristband that a company, an SME, that provides a wristband that monitors the health and fitness activity by transmitting data wirelessly. That's the digital technology. Okay, And the wearer keeps track of their training. Okay, they can go to their mobile app and keep a track of their training. That's the service. Okay, usage-based, a usage-based business model would be things such as car and bike sharing schemes. We actually have in Norwich here Bail Bike. Okay, so you have the app, you use the app in order to unlock the bike. Then the sensors, actuators, antennas, and so on inside the bike, the digital technologies, they monitor your ride, and they also provide in the end some statistics to you and how long it was and how fast you went and so on and so forth. And also, you in this particular business model, you pay per minute. Okay, in other instances, you might pay per kilometer. So that would be a usage-based, an exemplar, what we have in mind as a usage-based business model. Solution-oriented refers to basically guaranteed availability or utilization contracts. Okay, for example, the example that I used earlier, Rolls-Royce, power by the hour, has always been a digital servitization business model. Okay, Rolls-Royce has always been using digital technology to be able to provide that power by the hour offering. And final business model is the platform, where basically the offering is the platform. And I have here some examples like a dog walking on a dog sitting app, where basically the app enables the match of somebody who needs somebody to sit with their dog or walk their dog with the professional of amateur dog walker. So these are the four archetypical digital servitization business models. So what we wanted to do, as I said earlier, was to see what, for firms that are following one of those four business models or any of the two less sophisticated business models in a way, just servitized or non-servitized, to see under what conditions firms perform well, okay? And what are those conditions? Okay, we call them causal conditions following the language of the analytic technique that we apply, which I'm going to mention in a minute. But we basically scan the literature for factors that are saliently emerge in the literature as determining the success of servitization or digital servitization. We came up with four. We needed to be parsimonious. Okay, obviously you might tell me, oh, you didn't consider this factor. I will say yes, of course we didn't. We needed to come up with something manageable, a manageable number of factors that are relevant to capture just enough information about the context and just enough information about the organization. So these factors are competitive intensity, demand and predictability, product complexity, technological turbulence in the industry, and at the organizational level, the degree to which product and service business are distinct, which is a variable that has been it has been studied by servitization academics quite a lot. The service orientation of employee culture, and of course, the degree of digitalization, okay, the digital maturity of a firm, okay. The assumption here was that to some extent, digital maturity is a prerequisite for a firm to be able to move to a sophisticated digital servitization business model. And our data collection, we commissioned through the data collection through Qualtrics. I'm going to go through this slide very briefly, very quickly. The main study involved 352 observations, 352 respondents after removing inappropriate response and outliers. We used established scales for all factors, for all of these factors. Okay, we didn't come up with anything new. We just used measures that have been used in the literature. We captured some descriptive variables. We used the FA to remove bad performing items, and then we took the factor scores, okay, the means of the scales, the mean of these factors, okay. So we have basically a score for each of these factors. And data analysis, we wanted to explain, as I said, business performance. And we were looking at configurations. We wanted to identify the configurations, how these seven factors were interlinked, how they mix together to elicit superior performance. And for this reason, we use a technique which is suitable for this, which is fuzzy set qualitative comparative analysis. That's how it's called. If you're interested more in this, you want to find out more, I invite you to look at our report. There's loads of references there and lots of material that could be useful for you to understand it. Right, so I'm going to do the results, and I'm hoping that I will be done within 10, 15 minutes. Some descriptive results, okay, that just to understand a bit of our sample and to tell us whether that sample, sounds reasonable, sounds representative of the SME population or not. So what we have here, so we some descriptive stats. Size. What we see here is that there are primarily the firms that follow a pure product provision business model, as we see on the left-hand side, were primarily micro firms, okay, 1 to 9 employees, okay. And as we move forward towards a non-digital, just servitized business model, and then to the 4 digital servitization business model, we see that the proportion of these micro firms is obviously smaller, okay, the fraction. And at the same time, the small firms, 10 to 49 employees, and the medium firms, 50 to 249, their fraction, their proportion is increasing, okay? That tells you that the impression is that digital servitization is contingent to some extent on size, okay? Micro firms might find it pretty hard to implement a digital servitization business model. Now, this is a box plot, okay? This is a box plot that basically communicates interesting distributional properties of a measure. In this instance, is age. But what do we see here? We see that they are older, the firms that are following a pure product provision business model or a non-digital, just servitized business model are on average older. Digital servitization business models are on average, they are younger, okay? So that gives me the idea that it is younger firms, innovative firms that jump into digital servitization business model right away without needing to go through the entire journey, okay? The assumption of the literature that you are a pure product provider, then you might consider servitized business model where you offer a maintenance contract, let's say, and then implement digital technologies to get into a digital servitization business model. Okay, this kind of challenges this view. Okay, it is innovative firms that enter the market and they use digital technology straight away in order to be able to follow a sophisticated, a usage-based, solution-oriented, or platform business model. Business model innovation. So business model innovation was supposed to play a significant role in our story, but it didn't because the measure didn't work with our fact in our analysis, in our fact analysis. Without getting into the detail of this, we did take a mean score of business model innovation, and unsurprisingly, we can see that digital firms that follow a digital servitization business model, they do have this capability at a larger level, okay, the business model innovation capability, okay? What does that say? That says that, as expected, it is innovative firms who are more likely to be able to support, to provide a business model, a digital servitization business model. And then, again, as expected, this is no surprise whatsoever, okay? The digital servitization business model requires a level of digital maturity, okay? Digital maturity, just as a bit of a background, this is basically a measure that we took from PricewaterhouseCoopers study, okay? It has 4 aspects of digitization, internal digitization of the firm. And of course, unsurprisingly, firms that are able to provide digital servitization business models are mature digitally, okay? They are mature digitally. It might be a prerequisite. Digital maturity is a prerequisite to some extent to be able for a firm to move to digital servitization. That, of course, has implications, which we will discuss later on. Right. And finally, business performance, probably the most important variable, the one that we wanted to explain. Interestingly, we see that on average, this is just average difference. Okay, you see average, you see mean, median, interquartile range, and so on and so forth. Without getting to the statistical significance, I'm telling you that I don't want to get into sophisticated statistical discussion, but the differences here are statistically significant. Okay, SMEs that follow digital servitization business models perform systematically better than SMEs that follow just servitized business model, or they are pure product providers. Okay, so on average, firms that are using and that have adopted those business models perform better. And this is something that we take into consideration in our analysis, in our main analysis. So main results, okay? What I will present to you here is an idea of the configurations that are associated with superior business performance, financial performance, of SMEs that have chosen the different business models. And as I said, we apply the technique which comes with particular assumptions, and it is usual to report the results of the analytic technique in the following manner: in a table where you present the configurations of the variables, of the factors or causal conditions, which we had 7. And basically, the symbols here, what do they mean? A large black dot means that a particular condition, let's say competitive intensity, is present in a configuration. Okay, is a core condition and present. Okay, equivalently high levels of competitive intensity. A large circle, cross circle, which we don't have in this particular instance, but we have here, represents means that the condition is absent. Okay, equivalently low levels. When the smaller black dot means that the condition is contributing, the presence of the condition is contributing towards the outcome, okay, towards high performance. The difference between core and contributing conditions is not important for the purpose of this seminar, but basically core conditions, larger dots, larger circles are more important, okay, are integral parts of the configurations, okay, are more important in a way than the smaller dots, okay, than the conditions that have a smaller, a small dot or a small cross circle. So this is how they look. There are results, okay. For every business model, we have a solution which basically reports the configurations of contextual organizational factors that are associated with superior SME performance, okay. And for just as an example, I will just go through the first one, which is an add-on. If you're interested in, you can look at our report, which is going to be available tomorrow. And every table, of course, is interpreted and has a commentary. Okay, so what does this table tell us? Okay, that table tells us that for firms that have chosen, SMEs that have chosen an add-on business model, there are 2 configurations. One of them, the 1A, 1B, is basically the same configuration, but there is a permutation. Okay, it's not important for the purpose of the seminar, but there are 2 configurations which are actually quite different from each other. The first configuration emphasizes the context and basically shows that there are firms that they have a complex product, they operate in a quite intense competitive environment, and there is a high technological change in the industry. Okay, and the small dot here next to service culture means that they have high levels of service orientation of their employees developed, okay, and they perform well. By the way, I forgot to mention that whenever there is a blank, it means basically it does not matter, okay, irrelevant. So a condition that has a blank next to it in a configuration means that for this particular configuration, it doesn't matter whether, for example, for configuration 2 here, demand predictability is high or low. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now, the first configuration I already explained. The second basically shows that the context is much less relevant. What matters is that the company, the SME, has a strong service culture of employees, is digitally mature, and has separated the product from the service business. And of course, they have a complex product, but the rest of the context doesn't matter, okay? As long as they have these three organizational conditions in place, the context does not matter. So that's the sort of insight that we get from having applied this particular analytic technique, FSQCA. And the same goes for the remaining of the business models. And as I'm gonna just to mention that when we go to just servitized business model and a non-servitized business model, a pure product provision business model, we see fewer configurations that lead to high performance. Okay, they are more restrictive, let's say. So there is only one way. Okay, allow me this way to frame this. There's only one way that firms which are still only providing pure product can be successful. Okay, that's what this table tells us. Right. So, bit of discussion. Okay, there are and of course I invite you to look at to read our report. But there are 3 key points that are interrelated that emerge from this analysis. Okay, from these results. The first point is that SMEs can achieve high performance through different business models, depending on how well each one aligns with their organization's context and design. So, despite the fact that firms that have, descriptively speaking, on average, firms that have chosen digital servitization business model perform better than just servitized or pure product providers. Despite that, we find that even firms that following a just servitized business model can perform well compared to competitors as long as the right conditions are in place. Second point, for SMEs adopting a particular model, there exist multiple configurations, okay, that are equally effective. Okay, that's what, for example, this tells us. Okay, that this tells us that there are 4 different configurations that are equally effective in eliciting superior performance of SMEs that have chosen a usage-based business model. Okay, that basically is what we call in the literature the phenomenon of equifinality. Okay, different recipes, different configurations have the same outcome. Okay, final outcome, which is superior performance. Third, some contexts are conducive to more than one business model. Okay, SMEs following different business models in this context can all perform well. Okay, so some contexts are more restrictive, and there are fewer types of models that are proving to be effective. Some contexts are less restrictive, and firms following maybe even all business models can perform well. Okay, and I will show you an example in a minute. Then we find, and that's an outcome of an advantage of the technique that we use. We find that there is notable variation within successful configurations of business models. Okay, as I showed earlier, there are 4 quite different configurations, different to each other, that lead to superior performance of SMEs adopting a usage-based model, and also between. Okay, if you compare the platform business model successful configuration with the configurations that lead to superior performance of SMEs following a solution-oriented, they're quite different to each other. Okay, so there are similarities and differences. There is the picture is very nuanced, and that's why we're trying to convey in a summary manner here, but in a more extensive, more elaborate manner in our report. Now, the implications of business practice for SMEs, okay, are obviously implications for business practice. They only exclusively relate to SMEs. Okay, we did not study large firms. Okay, so we cannot say anything about them. But what we can say is that digital servitization is a viable strategy for SMEs, for manufacturing SMEs, leading to superior performance under conditions. Non or just servitized SMEs perform relatively worse on average, but contextual organizational parameters need to be considered. Okay, the conditions matter. Okay, there needs to be alignment between the context and the organization in order for an SME that has adopted a particular business model to be successful. And our toolkit might be useful, but it's just one tool. Okay, I will share our toolkit in a minute. Pervasiveness of product complexity. Okay, if you noticed, product complexity is present in almost all configurations. Okay, so the outcome, the question is, does it even make sense for simple product? Probably not. There must be an element of, there must be a certain level of complexity of the product in order for digital servitization to make sense for an SME. Okay, at least at the bare minimum, the product should be able to be connected to the cloud. Okay, to be able to transfer information, transfer and receive information and data. Digitization might need to take precedence over other investments. This basically, again, emerges from the fact that most successful configuration, they have the presence of digitization as a core element. Okay, so digitization, a certain level of digital maturity, is a prerequisite, okay, for a digital servitization business model. So the implication there for SMEs is that they should probably prioritize digitalizing their business over other investments, other growth investments, for example, expansion in new market or whatever. Okay, of course, we're not comparing decisions here, but what we see is that we fear, and also it comes up in various policy documents, that SMEs might lag behind large firms in terms of digital technology adoption and digital maturity. So we just add one more insight, one more point to this idea that digitalization is important. And finally, again, service orientation can only help. Okay, it's a relatively it's a relatively cheap investment. It might take time, of course, but it can only help improving the service orientation of employees. Okay, investing in some sort of training and upskilling and change of mindsets of the employees to become a bit more service oriented. Implications for policy. Okay, again, here we try to connect to documents such as the industrial strategy of the UK, Make UK, the Build Back Better plan, and so on and so forth. We, of course, encourage to accelerate digitization, digital servitization in SMEs, especially micro enterprises. Okay, raise awareness, provide incentives and financial resources, and facilitate digital upskilling and change in mindsets. And finally, for academia, we answered calls for developing and rationalizing a typology, identified configurations of conditions, and conducted that lead to superior performance, and conducted a large and quantitative study. The next step is to construct. We want to construct one more sample. This is Qualtrics-induced sample. Okay, we pay Qualtrics to get us the responses. We would like to compare and cross-validate. Okay, and we're doing it now. We haven't been successful so far to assemble to gather a large number of data points, and we also want to validate our findings with qualitative case studies. So that was the presentation, and I will now take you to our website. I will stop sharing and I will share my screen. Okay, and Dimitri, can you see my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So this is our website. Okay, this is the landing page, and the most important thing, we have some information about the project and ourselves. We have some data here, visualizations, and so on and so forth that you can also find in our report. We have a section with outputs, which is our presentations for in conferences, and the report is going to be here as well, and the video recording of this. But the most important thing, which we are pretty proud of, is the toolkit, okay, which is basically It comprises of two videos that take you through the toolkit, okay, and explain to you how to use it. It is directed to SMEs, okay, to SME owners, high-level SME managers, okay, and it is in the form of Google Forms, and you just basically need to respond to the questions, and then what you will receive as an outcome is an email that tells you which business model of the 6 might be the most suitable for your business, given your answers to the questions about the contextual factors and organizational factors, those 7 factors that I mentioned earlier. So what we have done is basically we repackaged our findings with by partnering with the right people, the people to develop the website and the backend. And in the backend, there are some elementary informations where what your response across those items, those questions regarding the 7 factors, your response basically is kind of coded in a profile, and this profile, high, low, high, low, high, low, okay, basically high competitive intensity, low competitive intensity, and so on and so forth, is matched with profiles of the 19, because they are 19, successful configurations. And you receive an email as to whether you might your profile matches a successful profile of firms in our sample that have followed a particular business model. Okay, and it tells you which business model is that, and you can use it as you wish. You can use it as in order to compare your adopted business model, which you know, of course, if you're an SME owner, with the suggested business model that comes out of our toolkit, or you can just use it to explore as a possibility. Okay, so if you receive a recommendation that you have good chances to achieve high performance if you choose a usage-based digital servitization business model, while your firm is still just servitized, maybe it's something to consider. Okay, we are not trying here to basically claim to be overconfident, overclaim, overreach what our SME toolkit achieves. It is just a tool. It is just a suggestion. And of course, for an SME owner, SME managers to make a decision to change their business model, it's of course a decision that should take a long time and thorough thinking and not just rely on just our website, obviously, okay, just our tool. That was just a caveat, okay? But I invite you, if you are an SME owner, or if you are a consultant for an SME, that also could work, to play with this, okay, and see whether it makes sense for you. And that's all we had to say. This is time for Q&A.
Fantastic, and we hope that you found this particular presentation informative. We do have a couple of questions into our chat that I have been monitoring. The first question actually comes from Chris. Could you confirm whether this is a business-to-consumer study? And if so, how might these configurations align in a business-to-business context? Which is a wonderful question.
Yeah. So no, it's not a business-to-consumer. We actually asked whether they are, what is the nature of the customers, and I'm just going to share my screen quickly. I didn't want to present it, but we actually have that, okay? And here you see business to business, business to consumer, business to government. Okay, we asked them to tell us who are the primary customers, and we provided more than one option, and that's how the distribution looks like. It's not very different, but Chris, just to let you know that the usage-based and solution-oriented business models are statistically significantly more likely to be provided to business customers rather compared to no service or non-digital. Okay, so but I didn't want to mention that. So it's not just a business to consumer. Okay, and we discussed that a little bit in our report. I hope I answered this question. Sorry.
And The second question comes from Illisis. Illisis, when it comes to understanding the age of the business actually addressed in the survey, we had a dedicated question asking about specifying the year of establishment of your company, which is, as a matter of fact, the preferred approach in entrepreneurship research to give us the opportunity to utilize that. And I hope that also addresses the second question. I see that we have other people actually writing on our chat as well.
Yeah, and Ulysses, what was the criteria? Yeah, there is no, there was no criteria. We just asked them the establishment year, and then we considered, we just basically considered the age as a descriptive statistic. If anybody is interested from whichever background, SME, academia, or consultants, please get in touch if you are interested in to talk or to consider even working together to some extent, to whatever extent. And that, of course, refers applies to both the people who are here today and those people who might be watching the recording.
Okay, I see we have a couple of people writing something on our chat as well. And just to reiterate the point that Tony previously mentioned, we are very keen to explore different angles and different dimensions of our project. And as such, we genuinely feel that this is indeed something of use and interest for a range of different audiences and multiple stakeholders. And do not hesitate to get in touch in order to explore and discuss this even further.
Yanga, how long did it take? We applied for it in deadline was September, I think, and the project it was an 8-month project. So all Interact projects of this sort were strictly 8 months. So obviously that took us all the way to July. But as you might imagine, as you can see, we have done quite a lot for the 8 months. That's what we believe, at least. And if we had longer time, we could have done some more things. Okay, for example, the next steps that I mentioned, in the end, we could have done them. Okay, but unfortunately, we don't have the time. But nothing's stopping us from, extending this with another project or for our own personal interest. We still have a few minutes, Dimitri. Okay, we don't need to.
Yeah, certainly. I think that we have a raised hand. I'm just wondering if Ulysses wants to ask a question and open up the mic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hi guys. Yes. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Can you hear me well, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. Thank you. Just following up a little bit on that question I did before. It's just, to me, it's very interesting, like the companies that have longer time as enterprises, they are just dedicated into products, because I will expect a smaller company to be, being less time without still producing a service. So that it was just making a little bit noise of me. What do you think is the reason that you got that longer time in the market for companies just offering the product? So it's maybe a bigger company, or I don't think it's someone in the middle, a company that is in the middle range. Let's say.
So I think, I'm trying to paraphrase also what you say, that there are the firms that are still producing just product, okay, just providing just the product without the services. It's given that they underperform, comparatively speaking. It seems to me that they are stuck. Okay, they are stuck there. They might not have the resources. They might not have the time to explore a more sophisticated business model, and they're just stuck there, performing in their admission worse than their competitors. Because our question about performance is how do you compare your own performance to the competitor's performance? So in my idea, and that's what gives rise to implications for policy. My sense is that they are stuck and they cannot move. They do not have the time, they do not have the resources. They work every day. They are under-resourced in terms of money and employees, and they do not have the time to be able to explore something that might be able to give them some more benefit and improve the performance. And that I'm saying that both in terms of looking at the graph that compares age, but also the graph that compares size. Okay, these firms are probably micro enterprise, so they are all their small firms that are just stuck there, and they are falling behind.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
And Ulysses, if I may just have one comment actually in regards to what Tony previously mentioned. This is very well documented in entrepreneurship and small business literature in the term of the liabilities of smallness, which is profoundly addressing that particular gap. So there are certain SMEs that initially at the beginning of their enterprising journey, they are looking for a business model. But ultimately, once they've identified a business model, they tend to be very reluctant to change, simply put, because of those liabilities of smallness and access to resources and access to the more finer elements that might lead into a transformation at the business model level. And this has been very well documented as part of the survey as well.
Okay, no, thanks for clarifying. Maybe just a bit of commercial. In the project where I work in the University of Nottingham, we provide 3 days of free research intervention to companies about adoption of digital technology. So if perhaps I'll reach out later on to explain in more detail to you guys, and probably there could be a space for collaboration.
Sure, absolutely.
We are very open to that, and it would be an absolute pleasure actually to follow up with that. So.
Sure. Shall I answer the question, the last question of Artemis? Because Artemis has asked whether a change in business model affect the performance, and if yes, in what way? So the way you have asking it, I have to say that we didn't look at the change. So we haven't captured a business model in time t, business model in time t+1. So I cannot answer the question. I cannot tell you. We haven't looked at. We didn't. It was in the back of our mind, but we didn't manage, given the time, of course, to see to explore this very interesting question. That would be a true contribution, a real contribution. Okay, but it would necessitate longitudinal data. It will probably necessitate also qualitative data. Okay, to actually look at how a firm moving from business model A, business model B, increase their performance or decrease their performance.